Welcome everyone. My name is Brandy Waliga from Violence Free Colorado, and we are here for our monthly Facts and Snacks webinar. So just a couple tech things. If you all are just logging in and want to introduce yourselves in the chat, that's also where we're going to be taking questions. If you have questions throughout the webinar, we can also do the option for, if you let me know in the chat that you would like me to unmute you, that could be another option depending upon how the panelists want to handle that. But just know that we will also send out with the recording, we're going to send out some of the documents that are follow-up documents with a link to the recording. We'll make sure that goes out after the webinar. And also, in terms of captioning, there is the option to have live transcript. You can click on CC at the bottom and you can turn that on for yourself if that's something that would be helpful for you. Otherwise, just know that if you have questions, you can type them in the chat. You can type directly to myself, or all the panelists will all be able to see that. And so I'm going to get us started here and hand it over to Nancy Lewis so we can start talking about the COVA Emergency Fund. Thanks, Nancy.
Hi. Well, thank you, Brandy, for setting this up. I'm Nancy Lewis. I'm the Executive Director of COVA. And with us, we have Madi Dennis, who is the Chief Deputy Director. And then we have people who are, we have Mandy McLean, who is the Director of the Emergency Fund, and Rachel, who is one of our advocates working with the Emergency Fund as an advocate. We've hired somebody else, and we have Carla, who's just transitioning out of the Emergency Fund to be a grant manager. So I guess what I would ask is that if I say something wrong, correct me, because I often do. My process is going to be that I'm going to talk a little bit about the application, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the reference guide, and I'm going to talk about some of the exceptions that we have, because every single case is different. Actually, we have at this point 3 funds. We have the VOCA ARPA Fund, or the DCJ ARPA Fund, which allows us to pay for mortgages up to June 30. We have the VOCA Emergency Fund, which hopefully will go on forever. That comes from DCJ. And we have a few very tiny funds when it doesn't fit into any of those things that we try to be able to help. But again, when you have $1 million, you can help in a bigger way. Then when you have a teeny weeny fund, we may only be able to pay $200, $300. So, and we're not asking you to figure out which fund it's going to come from. We're asking you to get the application in. The first thing about the application is that we ask that you as a victim advocate fill those out. There are 2 reasons. One is that we want you to have an understanding of what the crime victim is asking. 2, as an advocate, you know about victims' rights and you know about victims' compensation. If you hand this over to a crime victim, they don't have that information, or if somebody else, and we often have people who are not advocates that want to fill out the application. And we try to work with them so we're not running the crime victim around a telephone pole to get back to their advocate, but we prefer that we have an advocate fill it out. The next thing is, if you can fill it out as complete as possible. And the most important thing is that the ask has got to be connected to the crime, and there has to be crime. It can't be that she lost her job. It has to be she lost her job because of the crime. So it's real hard without getting feedback, but we want to make sure that, number 1, there is a crime, and number 2, that the ask is attached to the crime. That's what our funders ask us to do. It's a pretty simple application. It's only 3 pages. If you don't know, say you don't know. That will help us to move forward. Now I'm going to go over sort of the things that the kind of assistance that VOCA is saying we can pay for. The first one is childcare. It has to be a current invoice and it has to be from a licensed daycare. And it's not prolonged. We can maybe pay 1 month. If there's something real critical, we might be able to pay 2, but this isn't daycare forever. This is an emergency situation. Again, utilities, a copy of the bill. We can only pay for basic water, gas, and electricity. We can't pay for cable, streaming, or internet. Moving expenses. Now, moving expenses is a little tricky. One of the things we find is that a crime victim won't do a complete analyzation of what they are asking you to move. And if you use the movers that we work with most of all, and Mandy, what's their name?
Logistics Pro.
Logistics Pro. That we use them most of the time because they understand our system and they're pretty good. If you're using somebody that's not Logistics Pro, is that we need an estimate and we won't pay any more than the estimate, which what that means is that your crime victim has to have an accurate list of what it is they're moving. The movers can't show up and have a piano, or when you're saying 40 boxes and there are 140 boxes. So you need to be able to really work with people around the moving thing. Mandy, do you have anything else you want to say about moving?
Yeah, we usually do not pay movers with our credit card for that reason. If they go to move somebody and say the estimate is 3,500 and then they get there and they do the move and then they give us the invoice and it's 5,700. So if it's a company and we will pay them with a check and we'll ask the advocates to make sure that they could take a check, and then we will do it, either give them the check when the move is done, or if they need it before, we give them the amount that they get. But it's hard for them to get us an itemized receipt before. So that's why it's hard to work with certain moving companies. But a lot of times we will not put our credit card down because then they will authorize it for above and beyond what we've already authorized it for.
I like to tell the story about the time that we hired a U-Haul it and the person didn't come back for a month. It was over $3,000. U-Haul would not put out they wouldn't go to the police. My belief was that the woman was hauling marijuana back and forth before California had marijuana legalized. I don't know that, I made it up. But we have to be real careful that we don't, that $3,000 didn't come out of VOCA money, it comes out of our money. So we're real clear about trying to make sure we can say yes and get to yes about having somebody move in a way that protects that they're going to get to where they need to be and we're not going to get stuck paying things that we can't pay.
Just a quick side note on that, most U-Hauls are U-Haul companies, very few, we found maybe a couple mom and pops will take an actual check. Most of them will never take a check and they require a credit card. So therefore we cannot, a majority of the time, use U-Haul.
Yeah, and it's because if you put your credit card down, no matter what they do, you're responsible for it. So emergency shelter, and I'm going to talk a lot about that in a bit, but we need an authorized credit card authorization. We need a form of ID. COVA can only pay for the room and the tax. The client will need to have something to pay for incidentals. And I'm going to come back and talk about that on an emergency situation when weekends and nights. Right now, we can pay rent up to 3 months, but the funds will be dispensed 1 month at a time. We need a full copy of a signed lease, and if utilities are included, make sure that that's part of the ledger. And Mandy, do you want to talk a little bit about the rent stuff?
Rent, yeah, so like Nancy said, we can pay up to 3 months of rent, but the stipulation with that is each request has to come in for each month that you're doing. We cannot do all 3 at one time. With that being said, the documentation that we need for the 2nd and the 3rd month is a corresponding email regarding on why the client is needing assistance. So basically the email just to say the client is needing assistance because he or she had to take off a couple of days to go back and forth to court, something like that. But we have to have an email stating why they're needing assistance for the second month. And then if you're needing assistance for the third month, it's going to be the same for the third month. A new corresponding email, a new application every time updated. We do get a lot of applications where it comes in for February, but when they're asking for April and March, it still says the original date of February 2nd when you sent it in. So each application has to correspond with the month that you are asking for rent.
And like I said, we can only pay for mortgages up until June 30th. We cannot pay for deposits. We have no funds that will allow us to pay for deposits right now.
And when it comes to rent, we have to make sure that we do property checks to make sure we are actually paying the owner of the house versus somebody subleasing. We have to have a full signed lease from the renters and from the property owner, and it needs to be dated. So meaning the application or the lease cannot expire. If it expires and it does not say month to month, we will call you to ask you to get the new updated lease from the landlord.
Transportation, bus, plane, train tickets. No paper documents are needed, but you need to include the application, the method of transportation, the time and date of departure. And also if we usually book the ticket. So knowing, where they're going to fly out of or where they're going to land. And they need to make sure that they have ID to be able to get on the plane. Buses and trains, not so much. Okay. So,
And our policy is when you send in an application for relocation, we do not actually book that ticket unless we have the advocate on the phone with us to make sure that we're spelling the name right, to make sure we have the correct departure date and the correct arrival date. And then again, we won't book it without the advocate to make sure that there's no miscommunication or misinterpretation, and that we're all on the same page, and that the victim is getting out on a Tuesday versus a Wednesday, that we're all together getting them out.
Also, one of the things that we will ask you to do is to make sure that the victim has a place to be wherever they're going. Pardon me for coughing here. I've got a frog in my throat. We had an incident. It was really interesting that somebody called me about a 2019 application, and I'm thinking, you expect me to remember a 2019 application? But here was what happened. The woman did not have a place to stay. She knew people in, let's say, Phoenix, but she didn't have a place to stay. We said, we wouldn't move her knowing that. What happened was that she ended up being murdered. And if you as an advocate know that it's more dangerous for her to be here than to be homeless in Phoenix, you have to let us know that. We don't know the circumstances, and we don't want to put anybody in danger. And I would say that safety is our number one priority in helping people. So, okay. Hygiene and basic needs. I'm going to let you take that one, Mandy. Should give it to Carla.
Okay, so for basic needs and hygiene, we get a lot of applications from agencies who are needing support. And when we say basic needs and hygiene, we mean your basic needs to get you through for the month, your hygiene products for kids, females, males, deodorant, things like that. What we cannot provide on there is like socks and clothes and makeup and non-necessity items. Usually a lot of teams, it's just your basic grocery application. We have had certain circumstances where people have lived in their car, and unfortunately a serious crime has taken place. So they don't have any like socks and shoes. So there are certain times where we can do certain things, but this is what we ask. We either we need a list to approve it before we can go ahead and give the approval for either you guys to purchase it or for us to purchase it. If we are going to purchase it, we need a full itemized list. And when I say full itemized list, meaning if your client wants cereal, there's 1,000 brands of cereal. We need to know what kind of cereal. Same thing goes with milk. Is it whole milk? Is it soy milk? Is it 2% milk? So it needs to be really, really itemized. If you guys are going to go purchase it, that's fine. You just need to give us the basic list, mac and cheese, milk, butter, cream, whatnot. But we do ask is you do not buy above and beyond what that list says. So if we do get when we ask for the itemized receipt, we will have to go through it. And if there's something that is on there that was not on the list that we approved, we cannot reimburse you for that. If COVA does the list, and we will call the advocate, let him know what time your client can pick up from either Walmart, King Super, Safeway, or not. Every once in a while we can have it delivered depending on if the client can't pick it up for either a disability or due to the fact that they don't have a car. But we will arrange that with the advocates on the phone, just kind of like plane tickets, to find out what the best time is for them. I don't know if Carla wants to add anything. Again, we can do diapers, we could do, laundry soap. And again, it's to get them by for the month. It's unfortunately not to stock up for 3 or 4 months. So it's usually like one laundry detergent, one softener, one, shampoos for either the kids or the parents or whoever is living in the house. We do take into consideration kiddos. Sometimes we get a list and it just says milk and cheese and eggs and butter. But if you have a kiddo who is also involved in the crime, we ask the advocate to talk to the client again and put things on there that kids would like, especially if they're going through a hard time. And that means cookies, ice cream, things that will kind of, a little bit of self-care when you're watching a movie to take your mind off of whatever's going on. But as long as you give us the detailed list, we will call you, let you know it's approved for either you to buy or for us to buy. And it's pretty simple. And we will answer any questions kind of as they come along.
Okay, and the last one is short-term nursing care. Again, it has to be licensed and we have to have an invoice to pay that. Now, having said this is what they allow us to pay for, if you have a question, it is always all right to give us a call. And I'll give you a for instance on that. We had a woman, her grandson came into her home, was in the middle of winter, was trying to set her home on fire, disabled the heater, wrecked it so that it didn't operate. It was very, very cold and she needed a replacement heater in order to get through the thing. We called DCJ, got it approved, and we're able to get a new furnace in for this woman. So, I mean, we know, you can't be in this business and not know that there are very unusual, odd things that happen. And it is our desire to make sure that crime victims are getting what they need. Again, everything has to be connected to the crime, and we know that everything isn't always connected to the crime, but use your imagination and figure it out, because, we want to get to yes, and we can't get to yes if she's lost her job or she wrecked her car or one of those things. So you have to be a little clever is what I'm saying. And I'm not telling you to lie, I'm just telling you to be clever. So that's really the basics. I really want to talk about after hours and that, but I don't know if there are any questions on the basic things that we do. And I didn't know if Randy was going to read the questions to us or.
Nancy, I absolutely can read you some questions.
Okay.
We don't have any right now.
Okay.
I will let you all know if any pop up for sure. As the presentation goes on, feel free, anybody put in a question, no question, right or wrong, big or small, ask them all.
Well, and your question, I will bet that there are 48 people on the line and you ask a question, 10 of them have the same question. So we like questions. The second part is that we started off being able to say that we could handle calls on nights and weekends. And what happened was that we got an answering service, and the answering service tried to screen calls, but we went from maybe 2 or 3 calls a month to about 5 a week. And the staff was dragging their butt in here every day, being very tired because they were waking to the middle of the night. So we have a new plan. We're trying it out to make sure that it works. And that is that if you have somebody that needs a hotel stay or relocated because of safety, we're asking you to put it on your credit card, and we will, or to pay for it, and we will reimburse you. Here are the rules though. There are always rules. If it happens on a weeknight, the very next day we have to have the application, and if it's a hotel, then we need to pick up and put it on our credit card. But we need it the very next day. If it happens on Friday, we need it on Monday. If it happens on Saturday, we need it on Monday. If it happens on Sunday, we need it on Monday. Again, making sure that we have all the things we need, like we need a credit card authorization. We need, if it's a hotel, we need an ID and a credit card for incidentals. Now, I know that sometimes all of those things are not available. If you can find a hotel that's willing to do room and taxes without having a credit card for incidentals, we will do that. There are some hotels we won't do because we have very funny things that happen. And I don't know if my staff has any more to add to that.
The one thing I would say is we will only approve the nights in question. Again, if it's a Friday night or a Saturday night, doesn't mean that we can't extend it, but we won't extend it until you call the office on the next business working day. Let us know what date you're needing extended. And then again, we do need IDs for hotels. The biggest kicker that we find is that an ID has been expired, and a lot of times hotels will not check in your client with an expired ID. We do not need a copy of their credit card. We just need to verify with you, the advocate, that they have a credit card for incidentals. Because if we get a folio and something happened, or unfortunately a client doesn't abide by the rules and they have to leave, we cannot pay for any incidentals. So we have to make sure that either the client has a card down for incidentals or the agency is willing to put their card down.
Okay, so somebody asked the question, rent is okay, but not deposits. Absolutely not. We cannot pay for deposits. Is there a list of vendors that will take? Not really, because we work across the state. There are a few Motel 6s that, you want to talk about that, Mandy?
Yeah, we can no longer work with Motel 6, unfortunately. They were one of the ones that was pretty easy to work with, where we were able to get clients in there. They always said that they never needed a third-party authorization form. They would not charge any client for any incidentals if there was incidentals. And unfortunately, last week we had a client in there. If I remember right, and I could be wrong, I think a window got broken, or she broke the window. They had to have her leave. And what they told us is because we had our credit card down, because they didn't require a credit card from the client, we, no matter what, were responsible for the charges. So right now, unfortunately, we put a hold on Motel 6, kind of like with what happened with U-Haul. So Motel 6 right now is off of our radar, and we cannot work with them due to the fact that it doesn't matter what credit card is down. If something happens, it automatically comes back on us. And then unfortunately, VOCA doesn't pay for it. It has to come out of COVA's fund.
And I would just add that we could still reimburse you for those Motel 6 or U-Haul purchases if you're willing to put your own card down. We just can't pay for them directly.
Yeah, we would just have to have the itemized receipt or itemized folio that you paid for us to go over and make sure that we could pay it.
All right, so what happens if your agency does not have a credit card? Our after hours line is still available. They will go through the process of saying, do you have ID? Do you have a credit card? Do you have the credit card authorization? Blah, blah, blah. And then they call me. And the reason that we're we're still doing that is we recognize that there are some agencies that just don't have a credit card and they have an emergency. Again, though, all the rules apply. Like, we're not going to put our credit card down if the hotel is not willing to just say room and taxes. So it makes it real hard in the middle of the night to be able to say that's what the client needs. So I guess if I were in an agency, I would ask if you or your agency could get a credit card for emergencies, because it works a lot better. The other thing that I want to say, and I say this with much hesitance, because 99.9% of the crime victims who come to us to ask, or go to you to ask for help, and then you ask us, is that they are truly in need. That 1/10 of 1% or 100% of one, never mind, my math was going bad. That small amount of people, we know that we have crime victims who have figured out how to work the system, and they'll go to one agency and get rent paid, and then they'll go to another agency and get rent paid, and then they'll go to another agency and get rent paid. Or that we'll put them in a hotel. We put them in a hotel for a week. They get kicked out for being rowdy and having parties. They go to another agency to try to get a hotel room. Is that we keep a list of people who have been kicked out or troublesome. And so part of our process is to be able to check about people who are doing hotel hopping, or, or hopping agencies for rent, just to make sure that we're good stewards of the money. So I just wanted you to know that is, let's say you might pay for one night hotel on a Tuesday night, and on Wednesday we find out that this person has been kicked out of 2 hotels and has destroyed the room and has not been particularly astute to the fact that this is a gift to help people. So we went through that pretty quick. I know that there's got to be people online and on chat that may have some issues about why we did or didn't do something. And again, we always try to get to yes, and sometimes that's not possible, but we'll always try.
It doesn't look like we have any questions in the chat additionally, but the other option is, again, if folks would rather ask their question verbally, let me know and I can unmute you, so you can do that. So just let us know in the chat if that's something that you would like to do, because I know sometimes questions can be a little complicated. So feel free to let us know. We can make that happen. But I know that there can be tons and tons of questions about this. So hopefully folks are racking their brains to, ask that little question that you've had on your mind.
I have sort of a favor to ask, and that is, if let's say we put somebody in a hotel room and you have to renew it, don't wait till 4:30 to call us, because mostly we're driving home and we're in cars and we don't have a fax machine or a way to sort of to renew it. So if you know ahead of time in the day, that's real helpful. The last 2 Fridays we've gotten calls, at 4 and 4:30, which was really hard. That's a very hard question. The question is, do we help victims to attend court? We cannot do that with the VOCA funds. We absolutely cannot do that with the VOCA funds. We have been able to do, $100 or $200 occasionally to help somebody. I would like to see the fund expanded so that we can do that, because I think we've worked so hard to create a process where crime victims can be involved, and if they can't attend the court hearing, they're not involved. So at this point, the answer is a short no.
Can I mention something on that?
Yeah.
Okay, so with that being said, the times that we can help, we try to tell advocates that there's many processes in the courts, meaning arraignments, possible trials, and possible sentencing that are all not going to happen at the same time, same day, same month. So with that being said, if you have somebody who wants to come out to attend court, that is maybe a significant other or a support, they will need to let you know what part of the procedure they want to be there. Because if we can't bring them in for trial, and then say the person is found guilty and then be able to bring them back out for sentencing, it's usually one or the other just due to the funding. So if you do have those circumstances, really talk with your client, see what's most important for them and what will help them out the most. If it's trial, again, and there's always that kind of catch-22 where they can come out or wait for sentencing, but maybe it doesn't get to that point. So we just ask for you to talk with them and see what part of the court procedure that they want to be out here for the most, because we'd only be able to unfortunately do it for one.
And COVA really, really relies on you to be the person who deals with the crime victim, and that you have the most information, and the more information you share with us, the better that we can make decisions. I think there's a chat question.
Yes, it says, can you assist with gas costs for relocation?
Okay, that becomes very, very difficult because we can't give out gift cards and we can't write a check to the crime victim. So that's one of those things that comes out of our little fund. And we do it as generously as we can at the time. We have two little funds. We have a little weenie state bail fund, and this year Cal Clark of Channel 9 raised some money for us, and so right now we have a little bit of money that we can do that. It's real important because people want to be able, you can't buy gas across the country for somebody. The only way we know to do it is gift cards, and unfortunately VOCA won't let us do gift cards. So, but if they're going somewhere and they have rent to pay, we might be able to pay their rent, which gives them some cash. You know what I'm saying? If there's any way we can get around that, we will do our best. And so it's up to you to ask some questions about what is it that we could cover. Necessities, we have to buy the necessities. I mean, again, if we're buying food for a trip, that doesn't get them any extra money.
And with that being said, when it comes to relocation, sometimes relocation could be down the street, sometimes relocation can be Wyoming, sometimes it could be New York. Unfortunately, we do have a limitation on the amount of funding that we can give out. So sometimes we have gotten gas questions about wanting $800, $700 to be able to travel again to the East Coast and needing hotels for 2 or 3 nights. And unfortunately, we wouldn't be able to accommodate that, but we will be able to try to get you the most that we can. But there is a certain limit to it, which is usually 150, maybe a little bit more. It's not much, just because that funding goes for the whole state of Colorado for unexpected costs that VOCA can't cover.
Good questions. What other questions do folks have? You have a whole bunch of folks from COVA here ready to answer your questions, pick their brains about all the things.
It looks like we're giving out about over $1 million a year, and being able to help people, which when I started 27 years ago, we could only give $150 towards rent. And it's been pretty amazing to be able to see that we can really help crime victims through the transition, because all of us know that our lives are upset when we've been the victim of crime. So we hope it'll continue. For those people who know what happens in legislation, there's Senate Bill 183. It got through the Senate on first reading and just got through appropriations. It's got 2 more readings in the Senate and then goes to the House. I'm allowed to tell you this because I work for a nonprofit. If you have the ability to call your legislature and ask them to support this, we would really, really appreciate it. It's $35 million to come back up under VOCA and support the money that's going to be cut from VOCA in 23 and 24. So.
It looks like we have 2 similar questions. One is, could you share if there's financial support for childcare and how that looks? And the other is, what are your limitations on providing help with childcare payments?
It has to be a licensed daycare, which is problematic because licensed daycares are charged more, but in order for us to pay it, it has to be licensed, and we have to have an invoice from a licensed daycare. We cannot help for a long period of time, 1 month, maybe to get things stable. And, if there's still problems around safety with the family or that, we would certainly consider a 2nd month. So it's not continual daycare, it's emergency.
Right. Does the client kids have to be attending daycare before the crime to qualify?
No.
Great question.
Yeah. It is a great question because, normally with DV, the family's broken apart, and you might have the ability to have someone watch your kids, like you have the mom of the perpetrator or the offender, I guess I'm supposed to say. And, he's locked up. Mom's not feeling real happy about keeping the kids, and, daycare is all you have.
Yes, and it looks like Soledad's question about, does it have to be certified daycare or could a babysitter work? It sounds like that licensed daycare, like you mentioned.
Right, it has to be. That's the rules that VOCA have given us. They didn't ask if I would like to change it. But certainly having somebody come into your home and babysit while you're at work would be very, very beneficial to a family. But VOCA says no.
Well, here we have another question. If the victim has an outstanding balance on a bill, COVA will not cover for the upcoming month.
You want to take that, Mandy?
Well, that's kind of a loaded question. So this is the thing. If we see that the victim has a balance, and I'm not quite sure if you're asking a balance on rent or a balance on utilities, but if we get a bill and say the crime happened last month, but her bill is, or his bill is $1,000, $3,000 from not being able to pay it, we do ask the advocates to talk with the client, because sometimes if the current charges are $94 and we make a $94 payment, there's a possibility that it's not even going to be able to help the victim because they're still going to get their stuff shut off and stuff like that. When it comes to rent, it's kind of the same thing with rent. If they get a demand for notice payment, but they're 4 or 5 months behind and we're tying it to the most recent crime, which was a couple weeks ago or even a month, even if our limitations are up to 3 months, we will see what we could do. But if we are able to even pay a couple months, but they still have a $3,000 balance that they cannot come up with, we talk with the advocate to see if, okay, is it right for us to pay this? Or do we see if we can help her because he or she is going to be evicted anyway? And then we, once they get a new place, then we help them with their first month's rent. It kind of depends. It's, again, it's a case by case thing. A lot of it depends on, again, what kind of balance that they have and how big their outstanding balance is to see what we could do. We do try to get to a yes. Sometimes we can, sometimes we can't, but we will ask you as the advocate the proper questions to kind of filter it to see what's going to be best for the client.
Okay, and in the chat was the thing, can we pay for credit card bills for a survivor to get away while incurring expenses for a living or a car note? And the answer to that is no. You know, and I also want to just appreciate you as advocates, and I know how very difficult it is when you have a victim sitting across from you and the needs don't fit into VOCA. I recognize that is a very, very hard situation to be in. And so my advice is always, if you'll call and maybe talk through what we might be able to do, is that we would really like to be able to help. But again, VOCA is real clear about the rules that they've set up. And until I can raise $1 million to be able to pay mortgages and deposits and car notes and, you know, credit card to get away, I mean, we recognize that how difficult that is for a crime victim to be in that position.
Well, while we're waiting to see if folks have any last minute questions, I'm going to go ahead and launch our really quick poll. We launch a poll for all of our webinars. So I know sometimes the questions might not feel like the exact fit for every webinar, but we try to just do a little internal measurement. So I'm going to go ahead and launch the poll. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So just asking folks to answer honestly. Feel free to vote, give us your info, and then I can also share that information with the COVA staff. All right. I want to give it about 10 more seconds. Oh, just over half of folks voting. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. Maybe, apologies, the poll does not want to end on its own. Okay, here we go. All right, so lots of helpfulness in this presentation. So I'm going to share all that, and I will make sure that COVA staff gets all of these, all of this data as well. So thank you all for answering that. Any additional questions that anyone has while we have COVA staff here? We have one thank you in the chat, so thanks for sharing that.
I just want to say Brandy's gonna make sure that you have the application, the guidelines to the application, the new nighttime and weekend thing. So I think it's good to have that. Please do not give this to crime victims. We have crime victims who fill out their own application and then call us and say they're you. We don't want that to happen. Because we know they're not you, because we know you.
It's a great point, Nancy. And yes, for all the folks who are registered, we will go ahead and send out the recording link along with the follow-up materials that Nancy mentioned. Oh, we do have another question. I've submitted applications several times. Most recently, I submitted one for mortgage assistance, which was pretty new to my, oh, Carla was very helpful in answering my questions and walking me through the process. Thank you. Yay, shout outs. Awesome.
We like that.
Yes.
And I would say, again, one more time, shout outs to the advocates that are on this call. Colorado has one of the best systems in the country. We're not there yet. We're not covering all of it. We don't have all the things we need to support crime victims, but we're ahead of most states, and it's because of all the work that you do on a daily basis. So thank you.
Wonderful. Well, if folks don't have more questions, it is okay for us to wrap up early. That is absolutely okay. Just want to leave it open for another minute and see if anyone has anything else they want to share or ask, including COVA staff. If any of you all want to chime in with anything before we end.
We have a Victims' Rights Week event on April 25th from 5:30 to 7 over at Jeffco DA's office. Some of you may know Rhonda Fields. She lost her son Javad and her daughter. What's her daughter's name?
Vivian.
No, Vivian was the other one that died.
Oh,
It was Vivian and Javad that died. Rhonda and her daughter are going to speak, and we would love to have you. It's a free event to recognize crime victims. And then we want to see you all at the COVA conference at the end of October. We'll be live in person, hugging.
Mandy, did you want to add anything before we end?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, just to let the advocates know, every application is different, even though it might be the same, asking for the same thing, but if you send it to us and we say no, we do try to get it to a yes. I know the one that was, I think it was Diana was asking kind of about, incurred expenses or car note. If we can't pay it, we will ask you, depending on the information that's on the application, if we can help out with something else. Again, a utility bill, possible rent, mortgage, things like that. If we cannot obviously pay somebody directly. Again, we do try to get to yes. Sometimes, it is a no, but we do try to we'll go through the lines and try to figure out how we can help the client as best we can. So again, it's always best if you have questions, just give us a call and either ask for myself, Rachel, or Miss Carla. Even Alondra, she is no longer doing applications, but she can also filter the calls and answer the questions about the application. So again, as you're filling it out, or if somebody comes in that you think might be a fit and may not, just give us a call and run the scenario by us. Most likely we will ask you what your client's name is to see if they are in our database. We are very open and upfront if they are in our database, and if they are red flagged, and we'll let you know why. But we do like to get that so we could tell you, yeah, it's a go, send it in, and we'll see what we could do to try to help them.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all for being here, for being available for questions. It's been awesome to be able to hear all of this information. And yes, the follow-up information will go out this week. So thank you to all the attendees and thank you to all the panelists.
Well, thank you, Brandy, for setting it up for us. I appreciate it.
Yeah, wonderful. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and end us a little early. I'm going to stop our recording.